Well, thank you for having us into your home once again. You're watching Spindle City Straight Talk. I'm one of your hosts, CJ Ferry.
And I'm Bob Chip Camara, your other host. Welcome back to our second show. I hope you enjoyed our first.
Spindle City Straight Talk is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. So help me God. And, we hope to bring you the information that you don't seem to be getting anywhere else. So we want to bring you that information in a fashion that you can understand without all the hype, without all the big words and formulas, but just in a basic everyday format that you can grasp and you can understand and you can take home and say, this is what it is. And so right now I'm going to turn it over to Bob, and you can bring out our first.
Okay, our first topic is the S.A.F.E.R grant, which has to do with the fire department, which is near and dear to my heart since I spent 38 and a half years there. And I was the president of the union for 24. So
kind of got a love for it, I guess, huh?
Yeah, it's kind of something that's near and dear. And the S.A.F.E.R grant is something that's really misunderstood by a lot of people because it's been kind of manipulated by the politicians. They give people a false impression of what a S.A.F.E.R grant is. I believe the mayor just said he will not be able to maintain the manning level if the S.A.F.E.R grant isn't renewed. Well, first of all, a S.A.F.E.R grant isn't to maintain manpower, it's to increase manpower. One of the other factors of a S.A.F.E.R grant is there is a specified number of people that they give the grant out for, and you have to maintain that number of people and personnel on the job. Otherwise, you lose the grant, you get penalized part of the grant. And I think that was a big misconception when Fall River got the largest S.A.F.E.R grant ever given in the United States. The mayor increased its manpower to a very high level by using the S.A.F.E.R grant. But then he took political credit. He said, I increased the number of firefighters when in fact it was a federal grant that we know doesn't last forever, which in my opinion is always wrong because you're misleading the public. You're taking credit for what the federal government's done. We're not funding that with jobs that we can maintain with city funds. So it's kind of like pie in the sky. Now, the second factor is, and one of the things that hasn't been publicized in this year's budget about this S.A.F.E.R grant was that the mayor and the city of Fall River requested a waiver so they could reduce the number of firefighters. And they got that waiver. And that's kind of complicated because if you look at the city budget, there were 79 people on the S.A.F.E.R grant last year. They got a waiver, and there's still 79 people on the S.A.F.E.R grant. Well, what happened was the grant allowed them to continue to be paid for 79 people, but the city reduced 14 firefighters from city-funded money, which is really, really troubling because where did we divert that city money to? We chose to reduce the complement of firefighters and reduce jobs that we actually can control and pay for. So we voluntarily got rid of firefighters. And I'm sure that during his campaign, the mayor will talk about his great positions on public safety. And what you say and what you do sometimes can be two different things. And I think that, this is something that was really glossed over by the city council. I made a presentation in front of the council. I pointed it out, and everybody kind of went, "Yeah, okay," and let's move on to the next thing. And I'm sure CJ, as a citizen, has something to say about that.
Well, it just boggles my mind how we as a city can just turn around and say, "Okay, we're going to hire these people with the federal funds, and we're going to get rid of these people off of the city roll. We're going to put it bluntly, we're going to depend on the federal welfare, is what this is." And I've said this many times, and I get all kinds of comments about it, that Fall River is a welfare city. We exist totally on federal and state welfare dollars. And I don't mean, AFDC or EBT cards. I mean federal grants and state grants. But when you're looking at the fact that we have 79 firefighters that are hired and paid for out of state grants, when that federal grant, I should say, when that federal grant runs out, who pays for them? There's no money. We're not putting any money into the budget to pay for these firefighters. So what do we do then? And who's going to take responsibility for those 79 firefighters who are gone, that we don't have?
Well, I can tell you, the mayor's going to blame the federal government. He's going to say, well, they took the money away and there's nothing we can do. He won't mention the fact that he reduced 14 positions with city money. That's always been a problem in this city with public safety. They depend on state and federal grants to fund most of the departments, which is always the reason we always faced manpower cuts, which is the reason that I say we have to prioritize where we spend our tax dollars. These are essential services. We should be spending our money on the firefighting, police, education, because these are essential services. We should not be creating new jobs and patronage jobs and giving out pay raises and tax increases unless they're earmarked for public safety. And every year we go farther and farther away, and as you said, CJ, a lot of people don't like to hear it, but Fall River is a welfare city.
Yep.
Its essential services are basically funded by federal and state grants for the most part. And if those disappear, we're going to be disseminated.
We're at the point now where, with the amount of bonding we've done for minutia, and I'm going to be vilified for this comment too. Bonding $850,000 for a park with a fountain was a little ridiculous. But when we bond so much money and we constantly rack up our children's future, and we can't even pay our bills today without the federal government stepping in to pay our bills, doesn't that just seem that we're on the road to Detroit?
Yeah, I think we're on the road to being the new Woonsocket, which just went into receivership.
Right.
Because maybe I can draw an analogy that some people get confused when we start talking about money and grants. Basically, what we're doing is we're saying when the cost of our budget is going down because we took another credit card. Or if I bought a car and I had a 2-year loan and I refinanced it for 6 years, I would be paying less money in the short term, far more money in the long term. And this is what we've been doing. We've rebonded to reduce our today cost and pass that burden on to us and our children and our grandchildren. And we do the same things with credit cards. We spend taxpayers' money and we just get a new credit card. But ultimately, the fact is that we're going to get to a point where nobody's going to issue us another credit card. Our bond rating is going to fall through the floor, and it's about priorities. We extended bonds, we took new credit cards, and rather than choose to keep 14 firefighters on the job, we reduced that and spent money in other places. That would be like you taking your budget at home and saying, well, I need another $50 to buy food, so I'm going to get another credit card. And you get that other credit card, when you free up that $50, you go out and you take a vacation or something to Tiverton, but that's the problem in this city. We are looking at a catastrophic reduction in fire personnel.
But it's interesting because we call this a S.A.F.E.R grant, and yet we're losing 14 firefighters, which doesn't exactly make us safer. And we're talking about public safety. What is it going to take for our mayor and our city council to wake up? Is it going to take a death? Is it going to, be that somebody's going to have to die and say, well, if we had 14 more firefighters, this wouldn't have happened, or if we had 2 more firefighters, this wouldn't have happened. And that's an extreme, but it's a possibility.
You're right, and the problem we have here is that when we do get these cuts, nobody is going to take responsibility, and that's why we're here on Straight Talk, to tell you, to ask why these things are happening, because nobody is going to remember how we spent our money in this fiscal year next year. They're going to be talking about next year. Everybody's going to conveniently get political amnesia and try to convince everybody about the crisis. As we said in our last program, government by crisis. We're going to have a crisis with the fire department, and that's what everybody's going to try to focus you on. Nobody's going to remember that we voluntarily reduced manpower in this budget. Nobody's going to remember that we misspent money. And that's one of the fundamental problems we're having in this city, and that's why we're here to tell you the straight.
Yeah, and when you deal with a city administrator who turns around and says it's all about money, I mean, what are you going to do, right? And in a lot of ways, it is about money. The problem is it's not about our money; it's about the federal money. And as long as it's not about our money, the city doesn't care, or at least that's the message they're sending us.
Yeah. Well, they don't care. It is all about money. It's all about the citizens and the taxpayers are giving them money that they can spend for their priorities, while they depend on the state and the feds to give us money to do what the essential services that they should be spending our money on. And who's to blame? Is it us? CJ and I go before the council on a regular basis, but it's the people out there. It's the citizens of Fall River that have to ask why. You have to begin to hold their feet to the fire.
Yeah, and
no pun intended.
I know, really. But the worst part about it is, because again, like you said, we do go before the city council. But what they've even done to restrict what we can say is by limiting the time. They give us 3 minutes, and they limit the amount of time for citizen input to a half an hour. And then if you want to do that to the school committee, it has to be only with the items that are on the agenda. So you have to utilize your ability to speak when you get it, and you have to utilize it frequently. I'm really looking forward to seeing what happens with this year's request for a S.A.F.E.R grant, because I think you and I agree that odds are it's not going to happen.
Oh, absolutely. There's absolutely no chance. They received the largest grant in the history of the United States. And there's absolutely no way the feds we're going to give them anywhere near that grant. And, it's a reality. But as usual, they're not going to mention the reality, and they know it, just as they know many other things that we'll get into in other programs. Yeah. They know in advance what we're going to face, but they're going to wait and make it a crisis. And then the city council and the mayor will say, we have to do this, and we have to override. I'm going to make a bold prediction here. There's going to be a cry to override Proposition 2.5 next year when we lose the S.A.F.E.R grant. And I'm going to be in front of the council reminding them that where was the outcry when we lost 14 people this year? Mm-hmm. And that's one of our fundamental problems.
And it's interesting that you say that, because I know that I've already heard rumors that it's coming out of the 6th floor to override 2.5. Not only from the mayor's office, but from the city administrator, that a Prop 2.5 override is going to be necessary. So it would not surprise me that you have that next year, that they're asking for that. And that once they start doing that, it's going to be a regular and recurring thing.
Well, yeah. Well, one thing. Whenever historically any community has overridden 2.5, it's been about public safety. That's what they do. They utilize public safety to scare the public into voting. They don't remind the public how they've wasted their money to get to this point. But the fact is, it's either police protection or fire protection that has to be increased that they use to justify 2.5 overrides. And they're going to do it again. And that's why we're here a year early telling you people out there, when these councilors come to you, you tell them, we will not vote for 2.5 override until you spend our money in the right places.
Exactly, they have to. I mean, because remember, when you vote for a 2.5 override, you're basically giving them another credit card. You're giving them the right to just go spend some more money whichever way they see fit. And you and I have learned from experience in doing this all these years that they say it's for one thing and it goes somewhere else. It always goes somewhere else.
It certainly does. We've seen it time and time again. But as I said, when we get to this point, nobody's going to ask, why did you give out 50% pay raises to some people? Why did you give out 44% pay raises in the last fiscal year? Why did you spend all this money creating positions and now we have to override 2.5? Maybe if we didn't do all this and we focused on our public safety, we wouldn't have to override 2.5.
It's amazing what happens when government is left unchecked, you know? And there needs to be more people out there like us who hold government accountable. We need to be accountable. I mean, they hold us accountable for what we say, and we present the facts. So we need to hold government accountable for what they do and how they do it.
Well, I think Groucho Marx said it. You know me, I love quotes, and I'm going to paraphrase because I can't remember it exactly, but Groucho Marx said government is something that creates a problem, studies it, figures out a way to screw it up, and then taxes you for it.
There you go. And that's today's secret word.
And that's it. And I think he was right.
And it seems to be that way for sure. My goodness. But into another essential service topic. Education. Another pit hole of money.
Yep.
It seems.
Gigantic money pit.
We've gotten reports this week that 2 schools in Fall River, the Cuss Middle School and the Doran Elementary School, are no longer level 4 schools. Cuss Middle is now a level 1 school, amazing jump from level 4 to level 1, and the Doran is a level 2. But then on the outskirts of that, we hear that Watson is a level 4 school. Watson is one of the oldest schools in the city because most of the schools have been rebuilt and remodeled. And it was announced that a committee has been formed already to address the level 4 structure of the Watson School. And they're talking about how the Cuss was the poster child school for the nation on underperforming schools. And I think that's a wonderful thing that they can say that. My problem is this. How come it seems to me that these schools are planned to be level 4?
It's about money.
Well,
It's about money. We know that. It's always follow the money if you want to find out. But the thing that bothers me is that the way they get these schools to perform better, they actually move students around.
Right.
It's the old adage that figures don't lie, but liars can figure.
Yes.
And the reality is we also know that ultimately the Morton is going to be the next school that's going to be designated as a level 4 school because the city of Fall River has chosen to bus everyone who lives in a project to the Morton Middle School.
Yes.
Which I don't even know if it's legal. Because that may be discriminatory. Because
I believe it is.
If you live in a housing project, you are required to be sent to one school on the other side of the city for some people, and that's another cost introduced to the taxpayers because we're going to have to bus these kids. And
right.
There's another issue for this giant money pit that we call an educational system in Fall River.
And contrary to what was published in the Herald News from my letter to the editor, because that letter was edited, by the way, Meg Mayo Brown had a meeting with her staff at the Morton Middle School, and she said to her staff that Morton will be, not maybe, Morton will be a level 4 school by the end of the year. Okay? Now, for a superintendent of schools to say that her school or a school under her control will be a level 4 school by the end of the year tells me that she's either planned it or she has some inside knowledge as to what's going on. And then when you look at the fact that the students at that school that are being bused from all the housing projects or all the housing communities in the city under the authority of the Fall River Housing Authority are being bused to the Morton also says something. And remember, when a school is designated level 4, a couple of things happen. Number one, the school gets more money, which the school department needs. Controls are lifted on the contracts and on the school. The superintendent can hire and fire as they see fit, whoever they see fit to hire, at whatever pay rate they see fit. So it's amazing how at these schools, all these consultants are brought in to make things better.
Yeah, well, we've seen it before, and it's obviously pretty easy to figure Morton's going to be a level 4 school when they moved most of the underperforming kids into Morton to elevate the numbers on the other underperforming schools. But it's all about money, and Fall River spends a lot of money not on teachers but on administrative positions. I mean, call me crazy, but I don't think we need a dean of students in a middle school. I mean, I saw a dean of students in college. There's a dean of students here at Bristol Community College. Mm-hmm. But I don't think you really need a dean of students for middle school kids. And we have principals, assistant principals, assistants to the assistants. And we have this massive tier of consultants and administrators for a school system that for the last 20 years has been horrible at best.
20 years is, to say the least. I mean, I go back to when I was in this school system, and this school system was failing even back then, and I haven't seen any improvements. All I've seen is more and more buddies and buddies of buddies and buddies of buddies of buddies getting jobs that don't seem to do much. For the longest time, the Fall River Housing Authority was the patronage place.
Topic.
New topic, yeah. And now it's the Fall River school system, another patronage place. People get jobs there that are connected to the system. And again, the system's controlled by, basically 2 people. And we have to look at this and say, how can a system have 2 schools, if it's doing so well, come out of level 4 status, but we have waiting in the wings 2 schools waiting to go on? I mean, it just seems to be a little odd, because if we can do so well on bringing schools off of a level 4 status, wouldn't you be working on keeping all the rest of them off of level 4 status? Doesn't that make sense?
CJ, you're being logical. You can't be logical in Fall River. I mean, that would make sense if the school system was good enough and had a plan that would bring students up to level 1. That plan would be implemented throughout the city. Now, obviously, you're not thinking right, because
I'm sorry, Chippa. Live long and prosper.
Because as you said, it's about the money.
Yeah.
When your level 4 schools bring in money to the city, and this is a plan. This is a plan because, as you said, it opens the door for patronage. I mean, let's face it. The superintendent got a $20,000 pay raise, which, by the way, is the average income in the city of Fall River. The household income is $24,000. So she got a $20,000 a year pay raise on her already astronomical salary, and she got her PhD paid for, I believe.
Which she didn't complete.
Yeah. Well, maybe she was too busy working on getting everybody down to level 4 so she could get money for her school system.
There you go.
But that's one of the problems, as we know. We know that, unfortunately, the Fall River school system has proven that education is not its top priority.
Right. And we have to, we as a city, and we as the citizens of Fall River, have to make it very clear to our elected officials that education is important. If you want to attract businesses to Fall River, to bring jobs to Fall River, to improve the economy, education has to be important. Because if your students can't perform basic math and they cannot read at an appropriate grade level, such as reading simple instructions, how are they going to work in some of these jobs? I mean, we're in a society now where everything is on the computers, is on engineering, and we have to be able to do this. And we have to hold our elected officials accountable to what we're doing. And when we're not building up our educational system, we're denying our children a future. So, you know, as we do with finances in this city, you know, we rob our children of their future financially. Let's not rob them of their future educationally. It's just not right.
No, and the other factor is that accountability is the key, but we have to realize that you know, the fact in this city is that politicians all talk, they use the buzzwords during campaign season. Everybody's a big proponent of education. Everybody's a proponent of public safety. Everybody is a proponent of everything that's great. And we're going to build parks with fountains in them and everything is good and great. Yet, we never deliver. We have city councilors and a mayor with a track record. Look at it. Look what's happened. Look what's happened over the past 4 years with this mayor. Look what's happened with this city council and this budget. It's up to you out there in Fall River to start asking why, to start asking every single candidate, the incumbents, why they did what they did, and the people who are running for office, you have to ask them what they're going to do when they get there. In order for education to, the priority to become education, we have to hold the school department accountable. We can't continue to give pay raises and create positions in the administration for a school system that's not producing students and giving our students the best education they can.
No, and it holds true not only in our educational system, though. It holds true throughout city government. You know, we have to hold every single person accountable. You know, when I have to file paperwork with the city clerk's office for marriages that I performed, they have to be in a specific format. If they're not, they get handed back to me and I have to redo them. I'm held accountable for all of those things, and they don't take them, you know, if they're not done right. Why are we, how come, no, I shouldn't say why do we, but why are we allowed, or why do we allow it to be done to us where we take things that are not done correctly?
Well, because we have to live by a set of rules. The city and its government doesn't. Fall River actually is violating the law. We're deficit spending.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
We are deficit spending. We are spending more money than we have. And we're spending it because we're kicking the can down the road and we're rebonding and we're getting new credit cards and we're delaying the debt. But ultimately, if they took all our debt and made it due today, we would be in receivership. And that is the fact. You and I can't make a budget like they do. The school department makes budgets and the city side makes budgets that are predicated on wish lists. It's not a budget. You can't make a budget. I can't make a budget that says, this is my budget if I hit the Powerball, this is my budget if I hit a scratch ticket, and this is my budget if I don't get this. But if I don't get this, I have to go to somebody else for money like they did to come back to us for more fees and taxes.
That's right. And
that's the problem we have in this city. We're living in a dream world, and we're allowing them not to perform. They're underperforming. Our government is underperforming.
I'm about ready just to give them my checkbook and say, here you go, because it seems to be doing that already. So, and with that, I want to thank you for joining us today, and we look forward to seeing you again next week. Have a great day. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Goodbye. We'll see you at the next program, and remember, when good men do nothing, evil will prevail.